So when me and Esther got married and we went on our honeymoon, we went in an all-inclusive hotel. Have you been in one of those? Yeah? They're quite common now. And it just takes a lot of the stress out of what you do. And if you're someone who just likes to sit and chill and maybe plan one or two excursions, it's quite easy, isn't it? It's quite nice. Now, during the honeymoon, we were able to pick one of the excursions. So, I mean, Esther's not in the room, so I can just put it all on Esther. So Esther picked this bus trip, and it would take us into town, give us a bit of a tour around the area, and we thought, well, that could be quite nice. It changes the scenery a little bit, doesn't it? You know, get shut in the hotel, you can feel a little bit adventurous, but not too adventurous because you've gone on an organised bus trip. So, you know, we're queuing outside, as you do. You get up early, we get onto the bus, and we're looking at people. You give them smiles, like, hello, yeah, you know, there's other guests there. And we get onto the bus, and we start driving. You know, it's like 45 minutes, an hour into the nearest town where we are. And we start to get closer, and someone pipes up at the front. You know, they stand up, they get a microphone, and they start speaking. And we can't understand a word. The whole tour is in German. So we got onto a little bus tour that was all German. We didn't learn a great deal, but we did have a nice walk around town. Can't say we were very educated on it, but even though we're in an all-inclusive hotel, we still somehow managed to create a little bit of an issue. But you know, we had a great time, and I do like all-inclusive when it's covered. You know, there's a cover in there. You've got some safety, some security. Can you see where we're going to go with this? There's some level of covering. We're not just going to talk about holidays the whole time. Just need a nice little icebreaker to segue in. See, Jesus and the Bible, it does have a lot to say about being rooted, planted, coverings, that kind of stuff. And it might not be something that people touch on or even think about that often. But when you look through the Bible, it's a real biblical principle that people flourish more when they're planted in something, when they're covered in something. And, you know, it's the same for my life. It's the same for church. It's the same for our faith. Now, the Bible says this, John 15, 1-5. It's where he says, I am the true vine. My Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Did we get that? Yeah. So I think he's the vine. And we're told to remain in him. Now, I think we kind of, from a psychological point of view as well, psychologists will say that you become what you spend your time around. Does that make sense? You know, we look at this from a criminological perspective as well. And we've got something I've mentioned before called the maladaptive pattern. Everyone just say that, maladaptive pattern. And what they use that for is basically when they're trying to reduce reoffending rates, if someone's coming out of prison or that kind of environment, there's usually an issue if they're going back to a situation where all their friends or their community are just going to be encouraging them into a certain way again. Does that make sense? Because I think we love to think of ourselves as these strong, sovereign, willful beings that, you know, I'm never pressured into anything. I just, you know, I am my own person. I know my own mind and I'll go with it. And if you are that strong, God bless you. But a lot of us, we can be influenced, can't we? You know, we can be influenced by the environment we're in, by the people in our lives. What we need to do is make sure we get in the right kind of influences. See, the Bible says, this passage says, that he will prune what's not good. And it kind of, that is not a pleasant season, is it? You know, but we've experienced that. I've experienced that personally. I'm sure many of you have experienced that he will prune something when it's not good. But it's only so that something new can grow. Have you ever been pruned? Yeah. It's not fun, is it? But it's only for our benefit. So the Bible it has a lot to say about being planted, rooted, and this has really become one of our core values, I guess, for me and Esther, because we've seen the effects of what it has on people where we're not rooted, where we're not grounded in something. Because I think we live in a world today that really values, what's the right word? It really values options. And Esther's the sociologist, and she will say, the problem we're seeing with relationships today is that they're becoming more and more commodity-based. That rather than this deep commitment, this actually, these vows that we mean this is forever. But actually, what sociologists are seeing is that people are treating relationships more and more as a commodity. That as soon as it is no longer convenient or advantageous to me, or I'm no longer getting enough satisfaction or pleasure from the relationship, do you know what people do? People go. They leave. And obviously there is a time to walk away from something, but what they're looking at, what they're studying is that actually there's some level of depth that's being removed. Because we're sort of trained to be consumers from day one now, aren't we? If you don't get a good service, guess what? There's someone else offering 3, 4, 5 more. We have a lot of competition. We have options in the world. If you don't like Netflix, you can go and watch Disney Plus or any of these others that are popping up. I can't even keep up with the streaming services. If you want something, you can buy it and have it delivered tomorrow. I saw one advert saying someone's trying to do it delivered within the day. I don't know. The point is, this has an effect on us, and we'd be silly to believe it didn't. Because the Bible, it doesn't work this way. And faith, it doesn't work this way. There is no next day delivery, is there, for faith? We look at the Bible and we can pass over a whole generation within one verse. And what you don't see within that is the faithful people every day just living, going about their lives, but still being faithful, pressing in to God, pressing into Jesus. And what that requires is to be rooted, to be grounded, and to be covered. So we see the examples of covering through the Bible. We've got Moses and Joshua, Elisha, Elijah, Paul, Timothy. We've got Jesus, his disciples. There is always a relationship, some kind of covering. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yep. You okay? You all with me? Yeah? And when we've got a covering, we can have unity. Unity is so important, isn't it? Have you ever tried to run any kind of group or just something when it's fractured? I've given it a go. It doesn't work. It takes a long time to sort that out. When there is unity, it's so much better. And unity does not mean everyone is the same, does it? It just means actually we see this over here. We're following Jesus' direction. We see this over here. And for the most part, we're all just heading that way. We might walk differently. We might be at different paces. Some of us might be having a quick glance over here on the way, but ultimately there is unity because we're all moving in the same direction. That's what unity is. We don't need to look the same. We don't need to be the same, but we are slowly moving the same way. Does that make sense? Yeah? Now, again, from theological and criminological backgrounds, I guess, there's this word in the Bible that we don't tend to like. And it's called, get ready for this, submission. Dun, dun, dun. It's not a fun word, is it? And in fact, we have negative connotations about it, don't we, really? When we say the word of submission, it tends to be in a really negative form. We could use the word surrendered instead, but we don't like that one either, do we? As a country, we think surrender is for the weak. I don't think so. Like, we fight, we keep going. But the Bible is very clear. True strength is found in submission, isn't it? Submission to God. That we can be so concerned about our rights. One of my Bible college lecturers, he once said this to me. We're so interested in our rights today, because we've got a lot of them, which is good. We need them. But he said if we could be less interested in rights and more interested in following God's will, I wonder where we'd be. Does that make sense? Yeah? See, it's not a fun word. submission. But there is some great strength within it. When we're constantly resisting things, it can be difficult. Now, when we bring ourselves to a place, which is not easy, and many of us probably aren't in that space, or maybe we are for a certain aspect of our life, but not for all of it. But when we can come to a space and we say, Lord, Jesus, what is your will for my life? And whatever you say, I'll go for it. How would we respond right now if Jesus just walked in this morning and he said, I've got a plan for you, I've got a purpose for you? How would we respond? How many of us would say, whatever you've got to say, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it? Or how many of us would be like, well, what have you got in mind first? I don't know if I can commit, let's just hear it out and then I'll see if that's what I'm hearing too, Lord, if that's what I'm feeling. But when Jesus approached his disciples, he didn't give them this big plan, did he? He came to them and he said, come, follow me. I mean, I'd probably be thinking, well, for how long? Because I'm busy this evening, so is it like a whole day thing, or do I need to make some calls? You get what I'm saying, don't you? But there is something profound, there's something powerful in this simple but incredibly tough attitude that just says, whatever you say, God, I'll go with it. And if I can be bold, I do think maybe ourselves, maybe just the church in general, we've lost some of that. Because life is pretty complicated. We've all got busy lives. We've all got things going on. But do we allow for God to interrupt our lives? Do we give that submission, that surrender where we say, God, I will just give it all to you? What do you think? It's tough, isn't it? And it's something that each one of us, we can take away and we can think about it, pray about it. It's one of the things we can't really point the finger at each other and be like, well, you don't submit enough. When's the last time you surrendered? But we know in our hearts, don't we? But ultimately, if we want to grow closer to God, and I think we probably do, why would we be here? If we want to learn more of him, walk in his spirit more and more, there is a link, there is a biblical principle of being rooted, planted in him, and giving those areas of our life over to him. We might only be able to do a bit at a time, but it is so important. And the way we live, our actions, they do speak volumes, because we get this little example where it is about the heart, isn't it? Everything comes back to the heart, but the actions are what flow from the heart. So if I was to say to you, because we see this in Christianity sometimes, people can be encouraging each other and someone says, oh, but it's all about the heart. It is about the heart, but the actions flow from it. If I said, I love my wife, I love my wife. And then you said, well, Matt, when's the last time you spoke to her? I said, well, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. You'd be thinking, wait, you don't speak to her for 3 years? Well, no, but it's the heart, isn't it? It doesn't matter what I do, it's the heart. I know I love her in my own way. So what if I've not seen her for 3 years? What does that matter? Who'd be questioning my love right there? Come on. Because actions, while, actions can be faked, we understand that, but they do reveal what's going on in the heart. And sometimes if in our life, if we're not giving those areas of our life to God, if we're not coming under God in those areas of life, or if we're not even wanting to spend time, or if we don't value our prayer time, or just even church, if we don't value these things, it does reveal something, that there's a priority shift, isn't there? If you had to list your top 5 priorities right now, what do you think it would be? You don't have to don't shout them out, but don't you? If you could put your top 5 priorities down, where would God be on that list? Because I think for myself included with this, it's easy to kid yourself, isn't it? So I'm like, well, I'm going to put God at number 1. He's probably there thinking well, am I? Am I though? We could all do this exercise, couldn't we? And it's something I want to strive to. I don't think we just wake up one day by accident and, we're this just completely in the zone, walking in the Spirit. But we do move towards it. We do have to put effort and energy into that and walk towards it. So it is about the heart. But observe your actions, because they will give you an impression. They'll give you some clues about what really sits on the throne of your heart. Does that make sense? Not too bad, not too heavy? No? I'm just going to have a quick drink while you all take that in, okay? Pause for dramatic effect. Now, with coverings, I had this image in mind that it's the age-old saying, is it, that we're stronger together, it's really cliche. But actually, when we do put our efforts together, we can accomplish so much more than someone sat on their own. Soldiers, they used to have this thing called a shield wall back in the day. Can you guess what that is? And we're talking way back in the day when they used swords and shields. Okay? So they'd put their shields together, and you could interlock them. And some would be above, and you'd create this whole wall of metal, of shields, so that the enemy arrows just could not get to you. And you could advance closer and closer and closer, all huddled together with shields. Okay, shield wall. Does that make sense? Now, how would that go, that same example, if it's just you on your own? It wouldn't feel fun, would it? We've got we could have took this outside today. We could have had a great example. We could have just all stood with one umbrella on our own. Or we could have had a big tent, put it all together. The difference of a covering is being stood on your own or being with a whole group. It's being on your own with those archers coming at you with your one shield, or having a whole community of shield walls with you. And I know when things are tough for us, and even when things are good, I love the fact that I know we've got a praying community here. Because even if there's a day I'm feeling weak, I'm not quite feeling it, I know there will be people in this community that they will just be covering things in prayer. That is so important. Again, there's a lot of mystery around prayer, but the Bible is so clear that we're called to just keep praying. Pray about things, press in, and to have a community, in a way, it creates like a spiritual shield wall, that's amazing, isn't it? Because I don't want to be stood on my own when things get tough. We've been going through a tough season now, and I wouldn't want to be stood on my own. It makes such a difference when people are there for you, people who love you, care for you, who are praying for you, who will stand in the gap for you, who will help you physically. It just makes such a difference. And, I know we're still in sort of the early stages, I guess, of church life and ministry in the grand scheme of things, but one of the values we're trying to cultivate here is to really be planted, not just for the sake of it, but because it creates an authentic community. It doesn't work when we bring a surface level approach to our relationships, does it? We would probably say to each other, look, in your marriage, it's not going to work the first time you have some kind of disagreement. If you just disappear when things get tough, what would we say? You got to work through it. Because things are tough in life. Things can be tough. But we can't bring that same level of, we can't bring that Amazon Prime mentality into church life, because what happens is we just get disappointed. And yet you look at the Bible, there is a depth to relationships. There is a depth to this thing we call church. There's a whole study on this in theological circles called ecclesiology. It's the study of church, because we've all got different ideas of what that is. But this thing we do right now, even on this wet Sunday morning, and you brave souls are the ones that have come out in the rain. But this is so important. The gathering, the called out ones, the ones together. And there's something in that we can't find anywhere else. You try and compare how a church functions, operates, the spiritual makeup of it, and then you can't really find it anywhere else. There's something just amazing and complex about it. But we get lots of distractions in life, don't we? Anyone been distracted? Oh yeah. Too much, yeah. And Jesus, he gets his disciples to gather a crowd, and he wants to tell a story, a parable, like he does. And he's going to tell people about what can stop people from having faith. And he tells this story So you picture this, he's got a good crowd going. I love this because he just does the exact opposite of what everyone else does. You imagine you're getting a big conference going, you know what church life is like. People want it to be the best, don't they? They want everyone to have a good time, so Jesus gathers everyone up. He's got everyone there, and he tells this story, and he says, okay, let's say you've got a farmer, and he's got some seed, and he scatters some seed. Some lands on a rocky ground, some lands on some stony ground, some lands on some good soil, some lands on some thorny soil. If you get it, you get it. And then he leaves. So you've turned out for this. How would you feel? His disciples are there, they're scratching their heads and they're thinking, Jesus, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jesus? People need to know what that means. So he explains it to them. He says, listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. So that example, if it's not understood, there we go, straight away. It's easy to just neglect it, turn your back on it, leave it. We could probably understand that. We probably have seen that before. If we don't understand something, we are very unlikely to let it take root, to believe in it, to apply it to our lives, because we don't even understand it. It doesn't mean anything to me. And we can have that today. The name of Jesus is known almost all over the world, but you have to wonder, is the person behind the name known? So we need to understand it. Now, he goes on. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. We could probably all find ourselves in one of these categories at some point. So this person, it takes root. Or they have it, they receive it. But because the root isn't deep enough, once some pressure comes, it's gone. Have we seen that in the world? Have we felt that temptation? Sometimes we make a decision, we see someone, they make a decision to follow Christ, and they're given this idea that some people will say, you follow Jesus, everything will work out for you. And we think, no. We wish it was that way, that'd be great, wouldn't it? But we're never promised a trouble-free life. So some people, they come to God, they accept it to begin with, and think this is great, but then something comes. They're hit with something. It can be a loss of a job, or you lose someone, a medical issue, just something happens, and it just shakes you. And you think, I don't know about this now. This isn't for me, this isn't working out, this isn't what I expected. So it says that it's just uprooted, gone. When trouble comes, or even when pressure comes, we can see where our priorities lie. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. So we're almost given two examples here. Worries can stop it, can't it? When we're worried, when we're too anxious, it can rob us of our faith. It robs us of our peace. And I think it's interesting, it just includes this in here, the deceitfulness of riches. I suppose when you've got your own security, when everything in your life you've just sorted out for yourself, you can think, well, I don't need a God. Why would I need a God? I've got everything I need. It gives us this illusion, this security that I suppose is ultimately, it's an illusion. Because none of us actually are secure, are we? We can't predict life. As I said, our family, we just been going through something that just came out of nowhere. And it could affect any one of us at any moment. And it's not, I don't say that to scare people, but I just want us to have a humble posture that recognizes, even if everything in your life is amazing, that's good. We praise God for that. But still include Him in whatever you're doing. Because we just do not know what tomorrow will look like. what next year will look like, what 5 years' time will look like, what 10 years' time, we just do not know. But what we can see from the Word is we include Him every day in what we're doing. Whether it's a good season or a bad season, we let that root take more and more hold and see where we can go from there. So if we're too worried, we're too anxious, that could be financial too. If we're spending all of our time worried about the finances, then it robs us of faith, of peace. Likewise, if we've got too much, we can just think, I don't need God. But the seed fallen on good soil refers to someone who hears the word, understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. So someone who understands it, they hear it, they plant it. Presumably, they water it, they look after it, they nurture it. So when we hear from God, when we come to faith, it shows, yes, it is a relationship that we need to nurture, that we need to invest in. As I said, I've used this example before. We get this on a horizontal level with each other. Our relationships, they take time, don't they? I've said this before. If you stop talking to someone, over time, a drift will happen. If you're in a one-sided relationship for too long, what tends to happen? Well, you might either remain in it but unhappy, or eventually you stop. And it can be the same with God. Though He will never give up on us this side of heaven, like the parable of the prodigal son, He will always be there with arms wide open. But sometimes He does need us to just make that journey home. And that is us nurturing, that is us watering the root. When God gives us something, when we read His Bible, we see, okay, Lord, okay. I want to give this area of life to You. I want to trust You more. I want to trust You with my health. I want to trust You with my job, with my finances. And I want to trust You with my forgiveness. If there's something in my heart, a bitterness holding me back, I want You to take that. I want to just give that over to You because I want to water that seed ultimately.